Welcome back to the poker vlog. My third son was just born, so that was the reason for the hiatus. And I'm excited to get into this vlog. This one's a little bit wild and has some drama, so be ready. We visit 2 casinos. So after watching Branson Poker's vlogs, I've heard of the infamous 5-5-10 bounty game here at Gardens Casino. And that's all because of Branson Poker's vlogs, so I had to give it a go for my first time ever. And the first hand is a banger. We start off with pocket fives in a bomb pot. There's $125 in the middle, and we start off with drilling a set on a board that comes 5 deuce 6 with 2 diamonds, a very wet board. It checks to the opponent on my right, and he bets $100, and I decided to min click him here. I really didn't know what to do with our stack size. We only bought him for $500, so I mean, I could ship it here, and that's what I should have done, but I did not. I decided to min click, and it gets back to our opponent, and he ends up calling. So now the pot is $500+. The turn is the jack of clubs, a complete blank, and I decided to go all in, and he calls. So there's an $800 pot on our first hand in this infamous game where there's so much action. We have a set, and we can't believe it. And the river's a scary one. It's the 3 of hearts, so any 4 beats us, and he turns over a hand that beats us 4-8 offsuit for the straight. So we did lose our money, but this is a good game, and hopefully you can make it back in the next few hands. So I reload for another $500 or so, and this next hand we have ace jack offsuit in the small blind. What makes this game crazy is the bounty button. So how the button works, if you win a hand, you get the bounty button, and if you win the second hand in a row, everybody on the table pays you $25, and that's why the action is bonkers. So the cutoff, who has the bounty button, raises to $60 pre-flop. That's very large. And then the button calls. And now I think there's a perfect opportunity to squeeze with a hand, especially in this game. We have ace-jack offsuit, 450 behind, and we can take down a lot of money pre-flop, nearly $120. So we go all in. But then the button decides to call, and the cutoff folds. So our mission was not accomplished, and now we're going heads up to a flop with nearly $1,000 to win. The flop comes out 10 king 8. The turn is a king, and the river's another king, so all we have is ace high, and our opponent turns over pocket 10s for a full house, and we lose another buy-in. Theoretically, we should win one of these hands in the vlog, so hopefully this is the one. And if you guys have it, make sure you guys subscribe and like the video. I'd really appreciate it, especially if you're enjoying this or being entertained. And if you turn on notifications, you can join my poker journey to see when I post next. So this hand caused a lot of drama because I'm recording on the poker table, which is understandable, but let's get to the action. So the action starts with under the gun. He decides to min raise to $20. The button decides to call, and me in the small blind with pocket 6s, we're going to put in the chips as well. And then it gets to the $10 big blind, and he decides to make a big raise. He makes it around $140. And then the under the gun min raiser decides to snap call this, and I think with pocket 6s, we should go with our hand and just jam it. There's so much action here, and I think a pair might be good versus overs. A little hopeful, but I want to take my spots when they feel like they're right, and this one feels like it, so we're going to jam our entire stack in the middle for $470. It gets back to the big blind player, and he decides to rejam over us. That's not looking good. And then it takes the under the gun player a long time, but he decides to release. So now we're heads up in a massive pot, hoping to drill a 6, it feels like. The flop comes 4-6 king with 2 hearts. We drilled our set. We're going to show our opponent because only pocket kings beat us here, and I'm assuming he has ace king. Should we show pocket 6s? The turn is the 9 of clubs, and the river is the 3 of diamonds, and we're going to scoop this pot. And this is where the table starts getting very upset that I'm filming, and then some people do defend me. And, I mean, it makes sense. I know this is a public space, and people don't want to be filmed sometimes. But one more hand happened, but we decided not to film because the floor came down and told me to stop. So we're going to go over this last hand, and then we move to another casino. So we look down at ace 10 of hearts in the big blind. We have $1,000 behind, and there's a straddle on for $20. Under the gun decides to limp, and the small blind calls, and now it's on us. I think this is a mandatory raise. We make it $110. I think I should be going bigger here, like 150, 175. So one of the limpers decided to call my raise, and then it gets to the small blind player, the opponent who had 4-8 offsuit in the bomb pot, and he decides to limp raise to $520. Now it gets to us, and we go into the tank for nearly 2 minutes. I'm trying to decide what does our opponent have here that he limp raises. Sure, he can have aces, kings, and queens, and jacks. But what it does feel like, it seems like an opportunity to take down the pot, thinking that I might be raising lightly. I do have him titled as a whale, and somebody wants to get action in, so I'm assuming he has a low pocket pair, because what calls here and then decides to raise? He thinks maybe I'm not strong enough. Maybe I'm not on the top of my range, so he wants to jam to get me off of my hand. That is exactly what I'm holding. And I know that we're not ahead versus a pair, but we want to put him in the blender here, and we want to put max pressure and represent those overpairs. So we jam for $1,000 effective. Under the gun decides to fold. I mean, this action is absolutely bananas. And then it gets back to our opponent who raised, and he decides to put in the call. And now we're going to a run out, which comes 10-8-4. So we have top pair. The turn is the king of diamonds, not something we're comfortable with. And the river is the 6 of spades. So all those hands like pocket 8s, 4s, and 6s got there, but we got lucky. Our opponent has pocket 7s. So we scooped this nearly $2,000 pot. And if you guys are looking for action like this, I play on the Cheddar Club, hosted by Club GG, the app where you can play anywhere. The action's bananas. It's totally worth it, and I think you guys should sign up by clicking the link in the bio. I'll see you guys on the felt there. So after all this commotion and all this drama that was caused because of my camera and filming the floor, I decided to remove myself because people seemed uncomfortable with that, and I don't want to obviously make anyone feel that way. So, and we also get to cash out, and we just want a massive hand, which makes sense. I didn't want to hit and run when I beat the first opponent, so this sort of came along perfectly timing-wise. We cash out for around $2,200 for a $700 profit, and we're going to move to the Commerce Casino for our next session for tonight. All right, just take a nice breath, and we're going to start the next hand. We buy in for $500. We're playing 5-5 at the Commerce. It folds to us at the cutoff with ace-6 offsuit, a little wide, but we decided to raise it up to $20. We've been very quiet. We've been sitting down for like 30 minutes, haven't been doing a lot of opening, and there's 3 callers: the button, the small blind, and the big blind. So 4 ways we're going to ace-5-4 with 2 spades. The small blind decides to lead for $25, and the big blind folds. And I think we're just going to put in the call here. No reason to raise. We're only going to get called by better. And the button decides to fold as well. So now we're heads up. And the turn is the 8 of clubs. Our opponent decides to bet small here, $40. And I still don't think there's any reason to raise here. He might just have like a slow played straight. I don't think it would be this size, but I don't think there's any reason to raise here. We just want to keep in his bluffs. So we put in the call. It feels like our opponent's on a draw, so we put in the chips. The pot's now $210, and the river's the 10 of diamonds. Our opponent checks, and we're going to check this back, and he shows us 5-7 of diamonds. So we're going to scoop this and win with our top pair. It always feels good to win your first hand at a new table. So now we're going in this next hand. We're in the button with another rag hand. We have ace-5 offsuit. Late position limps, and I just want to attack. We make it $25. The small blind, the big blind, and the late position players call. So we should probably just be playing the top of our range here and not bluff too often, since there's so many people calling. Such a weak hand going into a flop. $100 in the middle, and the flop comes 5-4-3 rainbow. So we have top pair, top kicker with a gutter to the straight. And this is where the action starts. It checks all the way to me, and this is where we contemplate, do we want to bet here, or do we want to check and see another card? And I think we want to bet here. Not often, but versus all these limpers, they can have a lot of random hands, especially like Jack 10, King Queen, Ace 7, Ace 9, Ace 8. We want to get all those hands out of here, so we're going to bet $30, and we can fold to a big raise if necessary. And then the small blind decides to release, and then the big blind decides to check raise to $80. The late position limper decides to get out of there. Now it's on me. We're heads up, and what do we want to do here? I mean, obviously, I think we should put in the call. This is a small raise, a relatively small raise, like, hey, I have a deuce, and I want to see if an ace comes out or a 6 comes out type of raise, like, or I just want you to fold your hand now because I don't really have anything. That's what this raise is telling me. So we're going to put in the call here. Our spidey senses are going off. It feels more like a bluff than it is anything. So we're going to call and sort of tread cautiously. The turn is the King of Hearts, a card that's much better for our range than our opponent's, and he bets $200 very, very fast. I don't know if that makes any sense to bet quickly on this card. We don't know what he has. Maybe he has a set, maybe he has 2 pair. But I think our 5 beats a lot of his 5. So if he has, you know, Queen 5 or Jack 5, 10 5, we beat all those. Obviously, we don't beat King 5 now because that's top 2 pair. Maybe he saw it and just decided to act quickly if he did have King 5. But we're just going to call here again. It feels like a clean river. and it feels like mostly a blank. So when the river comes the 8 of hearts, which feels very, very dry, feels like it doesn't help any of his hands, he decides to go all in very fast right when this card hits the river for $300. I think all of these timing tails do have an effect on my decision making. I am a very sticky player, but we go into the tank for a long, long time. We're trying to piece together the hands that make sense that we lose to. So one of the hands that made sense to me is pocket sixes, or a hand like ace deuce, obviously, which is a straight. Those are 2 hands we lose to right now. And while I'm making all these decisions, trying to figure it out, all of a sudden my hand literally just throws the chip. It was like a reflex. I knew that I wasn't going to fold after thinking for this long, so I decided just to throw it in because I can't figure out what he's going for value with. So I throw in the call, and our opponent flips over a hand that we beat 5-7 offsuit. I guess he was just taking his top pair into full max overdrive and turned into a bluff. And we end up scooping this $1,260 pot. Pretty unbelievable, but pretty proud of myself here. There are a lot of moments where I am wrong on the vlog and in the shorts, but this one felt right, and we figured it out, and the puzzle was solved. All right, this is the last hand we have on camera, and then we have 2 more following, so be prepared. We peel ace 10 in middle position. I raise up to $15, and the small blind and the big blind call. And we're going 3 ways to a flop, which is ace 7 deuce with 2 clubs. So we have top pair. Feels good. The small blind checks and the big blind leads for $25, and I think this is a mandatory raise here. We got to protect from so many hands here, and a lead feels like I want to set my own price. So we make it $65. This should be larger, but whatever. The small blind folds and the big blind calls. Nothing crazy. So the pot is $175. The turn is the king of clubs. Not a very nice looking card, but it is what it is. Our opponent checks to us, and I decide to bet this card. I don't think this is the best play, but we do it in the moment. So we bet $105. We want to represent flushes, and right when I put out this $105 bet, our opponent snap calls. So now we got our alarm bells going off. We don't like to see this. And the river comes the king of diamonds. And this is where it gets crazy. Our opponent decides to lead again, but she bets the same size as I did before, $110. I'm so confused what this means. Does she just go runner trips on us? Or maybe she has a flush, she's going for value. It really does feel like that, a baby flush that's going for value. So I'm still in the blender, and I can't figure out what the hell this is. Our opponent gives us a great price. For only $100 to call, we can win a $400 pot, or essentially it'd be $600 if I do call. Honestly, if this is a bluff, she's disguising it so well as a flush, and we can't help but to put in the call here. So we flick it in because this is such a weird line, and she turns over hand that we surprisingly beat, ace 7 offsuit. So she had top 2 pair, and then snap called us, and then turned her hand into a bluff on the river when the kings paired the board. Very confusing to me. And this is the only hand that really made sense to me, and that's why I put in the call, putting her on a hand such as this, like ace deuce, ace 7, turn her hand to a bluff. Yeah, I don't think there's much thought into this. I just was sticky and called and got lucky. So, and this is where the cameras turn off, and we have 2 more hands to speed through. All right, I'll try to keep track of this and make these quick. We looked at an ace, jack of diamonds in middle position. I raise up to $15, and the cutoff calls, and then the button decides to raise to $50. I put in the call and also the cutoff. So now we're 3 ways, going to a $150 pot. The flop comes queen 8-5 with 2 clubs. It checks around. The turn is the 10 of diamonds. So now we have the backdoor flush draw and 1 over. I think this is a great card for us. So now I'm trying to figure out this puzzle. How do we take this pot down now? I think leading here and taking the initiative is not the way to go. I think we need to check raise. Hopefully the button player, who's been aggressive since he sat down, will do so. So I check, and the cutoff checks, and our opponent does take the bait. He bets $60 into a $150 pot, and I think this is a great sizing to attack. So we check raise to $210. And after 30 seconds, our opponent decides to put in the chips. So the tension is building, and in my mind, I'm shoving nearly any river card. So the river comes. It is the 10 of hearts. So it goes runner 10s. And I still think this is a great card for us to go all in. Our opponent only has around $300 behind. So we take our 5 seconds and we think about it, and we decide to go all in for $300 for the rest of his stack. So the pot is nearly $870, and he takes around a minute and decides to release. We get the bluff through, and I think the check raise was the only reason we got the bluff through, because if he did fold a queen here, which I don't think he did, maybe he has a hand like pocket 9s or pocket jacks. So glad to figure that hand out and take it down. Even though we did miss, we took it down, so that feels good. We look down at ace, 10 offsuit, the ace of clubs, 10 of hearts. In early position, we make it $20, and the middle position player and the button decide to call. So we're out of position here on this hand, and the flop comes ace, 7, king. So we have top pair, and we should always bet this board. It always hits our range. So we're gonna bet $25. Middle position calls, and the button folds. So now we're heads up. The turn is the 8 of clubs, introducing a backdoor club draw. I decided to bet $80 on this, and our opponent calls. The river's the 5 of clubs, so the backdoor flush draw got there, and I think we just need to find a blocker size here. Nothing too crazy, so we make it $100. Our opponent calls, and we win another pot. We show the ace 10, and he doesn't show, he just releases. Yeah, so that felt good. And welcome to the last hand of the vlog. Thanks for staying here and getting to this point. Really appreciate you. We look down at ace, 10 of hearts under the gun. We have around $1,600 in our stack, so we've nearly tripled our buy-in. It feels very good. We raise it up to $20. We end up getting 3 callers, so we're out of position here. And the flop is very interesting, very dicey. Ace, king, 10. We have top and bottom pair. I think it would be best to check. I couldn't figure out if I should be checking or betting here. What do you guys think? I decided to bet. I make it $30. Middle position and the button call. I think a check raise would be much cooler here. But it is what it is. The turn is the 6 of diamonds, a complete blink. We have all ace, king, ace 10. And, I mean, sometimes our opponents can have pocket 10s, but it's very unlikely. So I think we just got the nuts here. If someone has slow played queen jack, it is what it is. But we need protection from flush draws right now. I decided to bet $110 into a $170 pot. And middle position player calls, and the button folds. So now we're heads up. I know right when the spade hits, it's time to go into check call mode. This is the same opponent from last hand. He's been very aggressive since he sat down. And he feels like an opponent who knows how to bluff. So that's the vibes I'm catching right now. So when our opponent decides to go all in for $300, we snap call. And he has king 7 of diamonds. So he had the gutter to the straight, and he ended up getting the backdoor flush draw with the diamonds. And he turned his hand into a bluff on the river. So, hey, we got max value, and we win this nearly $1,000 pot. So now we're going to go to the cage and cash out for a huge win. So we bought into the game for $500, and we cash out for $2,410 for a profit of $1,910. So in total tonight, we made $2,670. What a freaking night. Thanks for joining me here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.